Gentlemen, the toughest thing a manager has to do is trade a player.
Trade?
He's got to weigh past performance against future potential. And always think of the good of the team. Kirby, you're an incredible player, but one of you has to go.
Skip.
Official Major League Baseball cards from Donruss, Fleer, Score, and Upper Deck make all your favorite players come alive.
Dave Winfield.
Hey, Kirby. Didn't I pass you on the way in?
Welcome to MLB's Carded, presented by the eBay Vault, home of the hobby. Today, we're going to find out about Sean Casey's latest baseball card venture and learn a little bit about the history of Bowman cards. But first, we're going on a field trip to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Really, the Met is famous for its historical artifacts like ancient Sumerian sculptures, paintings by Picasso, suits of armor from the 1500s, and of course, baseball cards. They have a very impressive collection of vintage cardboard, and it's thanks to one dedicated collector.
Jefferson Burdick was an avid collector of all types of printed ephemera. That, of course, included baseball cards. He wanted his collection that he spent decades accumulating to end up at an institution that he thought would take good care of it and, present it to the public, share it with the public. And so he approached the Metropolitan Museum of Art in the late 1940s and offered the collection to the institution. And at first, the institution actually rejected it and said, "We don't collect material of this type." He met with the curator of prints at the time named A. Hyatt Mayer. And Mayer got a kind of deeper sense of really how massive this collection was. It numbered at almost 300,000 items at that point. And so the caveat for accepting the collection was that Burdick organize it. He come up with some kind of organizational system that makes sense of it. And Burdick came up with this kind of quirky system where he assigned a letter and a number to each set of cards. And that's where the T206 comes from. Most people know the Honus Wagner card is colloquially called the T206. That's because it was part of the white border series that Burdick designated T, which stands for 20th century tobacco, and 206 as it was the 206th series in the collection. He was really meticulous in the way that he compiled these albums. Many of the cards that we have on view are album pages that we have very carefully removed from those albums, and then we've matted and framed those album pages and put them on view. And we then also have the opportunity in the future to put them back into the album as if they never left. And while the cards, of course, have an innate value in themselves, for us as an institution, the Burdick collection as a whole, the way he approached organizing the collection and amassing the collection is also of historic interest. So we make an effort to present his story alongside the story of the cards themselves. These cards are really interesting. Two of them show Babe Ruth in the 1920s, the early 1920s. They were issued by the American Caramel Company. And this top card here dates to 1921, after Babe Ruth joined the Yankees. However, if you take a very close look at his uniform, you can vaguely make out that the uniform says Red Sox on it. And so this was a card that was issued when Ruth was on the Yankees. It says George Ruth, New York Americans, but he's still in his Red Sox uniform because the company did not have any photographs of him in a Yankees uniform. The museum values these cards for many reasons. When presented in certain contexts, they can tell different kinds of narratives and different histories. One of those is the history of printing and commercial printing processes. We have cards that were printed using albumin photography, chromolithography, all types of printing methods that are used for commercial purposes, and so that's of interest. Many of the cards are really attractive and really interesting from an aesthetic standpoint, and so they help to also tell this history of graphic design. And you have some really well-known illustrators and graphic designers who contributed their talents to designing baseball cards, especially with the collection that we have that dates from the 1880s up until the 1960s. There was no consistency really up until the 1950s in terms of the format of the cards, the size of the cards, the colors used. And so you get this array of really interesting designs and illustrations. And so that's one story we can tell. Obviously, baseball is such an important part of American culture. And so, we could tell this really interesting story too about the place of it in American society and how the visual culture of baseball cards contributes to that history. So there's so many different kind of aspects of baseball card history that make it a good fit for an institution like ours, for an art museum. It's something that's close to a lot of people's hearts, and just its ties to the history of collecting in general, I think, is really interesting. We have over 1 million prints in this museum's collection, and so many of them have come into the museum because of collectors, because there are people who are passionate about collecting prints on a large scale, putting them in albums, and giving them to the museum, and that's not that different from how the baseball card collection came to us. So it's clearly something that's of extreme interest to a lot of people. You don't learn about baseball cards when you're in grad school studying art history, but I have brought to this position an interest in the history of printing, the history of graphic design, and recognize that there's so many opportunities to present it to the public in different kinds of contexts that are meaningful and tell us something about our culture.
The cards on display at the Met get swapped out every so often, so you may see something different every time you go. You can also check out the Burdick Collection online through the Met's website. Up next, my friend Sean Casey has already lived out one childhood dream. He was a great major league player, like really good. Now, when I found out he was now living another childhood dream, I knew I had to have him on the show to talk about it.
What's up, everybody? Sean Casey here with my man Fred Law.
How you doing, Sean?
Fred? This is my partner here, Gold Line Collectibles. We've owned this place for what, 2 years?
2 years
Fred?
now.
About 2 years, and it's funny looking back our relationship. I was starting a restaurant out back in the day. You were the general contractor.
Yes, I was.
Kind of struck up a conversation about your love for cards and collecting, and talking about maybe trying to open up a place. And I obviously, even though I'd played in the big leagues 12 years. I was a collector, my whole life growing up with cards and memorabilia and everything. That was kind of our connection, and then we decided to kind of go into business together, and here we are, 2 years later.
I needed a kickstart to go and get the business started because I was by myself building something that I had no idea what I was building, and I met Sean, and we put the pieces together and just started a great relationship and grew this business to what it is today.
One of my dreams, probably forever, has been to own a baseball card shop. It wasn't necessarily planned, but the best things in life aren't necessarily planned. So it was one of those things where I found the right partner, and it worked out to create this place, Gold Line Collectibles, and it's been a lot of fun. I loved baseball so much, but the collecting cards made me love it even more, and it was just such a passion of mine.
And my guy Sean Casey joins us now. Sean, all the accomplishments in your wonderful life. A card store?
Yeah.
What drove you to that?
I've always loved cards. Always, growing up, always loved baseball cards, was a card collector. And a friend of mine, it was a friend of a friend, introduced me to Fred Roth. And, he was talking about opening up a store out here in Jersey. And I said, I'd love to come in with you. And we just combined forces, and we've had it for a few years now. And it's just been awesome. It's like I'm back. It's like I'm a kid again with money.
It's like every kid's dream.
Like back in the day, Greg, when I was collecting, it was like, I'm delivering papers, cutting grass, shoveling driveway. And all I'm doing is buying wrestling figures and baseball cards. And now I got the big league money, and now I can buy a card store.
It's so crazy. I'm trying to imagine being you, loving cards because I love them as well.
I know you do. Well, dude, they're all over
In my office.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it needs. I don't know how my office hasn't been in the show yet. It's going to be at some point. But you have to walk into this store going, ooh, I love that. Ooh, I love that. Ooh, I love that. So is it bittersweet when a customer walks in and buys a high-end product that you were so proud to have in your store?
I think, you know what? I think one thing I always think of is nowadays with the boxes, you know, when opening up the packs, you know, so you might sell a box, you know, that's, you know, whatever, for a few $100s, knowing there could be a $10,000 signed card in there.
Yes.
So I think sometimes the kid in me is like, ooh, shouldn't we open up the packs first to see if there's maybe a Fernando Tatis in there or a Wander Franco or, you know, something like that, signed cards? Because nowadays, that's the big thing about collecting is, you know, most of these boxes have a few signed cards in there.
So did the industry spiking when it did kind of drive you to this?
I think so, yeah. I think so. I think the COVID pandemic really launched the card industry even more just because, you know, people were out of work. They were looking for ways to make money. And I think the card industry, you know, really took off even more with having eBay, and you could really go international. And so, yeah, I think that was a big reason we ended up starting a
Is
card
it
store.
the same experience? Take me back to young Sean Casey, walking into a card store compared to the way it is now walking into, what's your card store's name again?
Gold Line Collectibles.
Okay, well, I walk into Gold Line Collectibles. Is it the same experience? If I'm a 12-year-old.
Yeah, you're going to be excited. You walk into Gold Line Collectibles, you're going to be excited. You know, we have, you know, obviously individual cards out that you can buy. We have sets that you can buy, all that stuff. You're going to be fired up to be in Gold Line Collectibles. I think that's one thing for me when I walk in. I feel like that little kid. I feel like that 13, 14-year-old kid that was setting up at the Green Tree Marriott in Pittsburgh and laying out my cards and looking for the Jose Canseco rated rookie or the Don Mattingly, you know, 85 tops or Roger Clemens. You know, all the things that I was looking for back in the day, all the cards that I collected. You know, I think that little kid is in all of us, Greg, and I feel like it's still in me now at 47, you know, owning this card shop.
I have to ask everybody that's been on this show, that's a former big leaguer, everyone has their favorite Sean Casey card and their least favorite Sean Casey card, although I love all my Sean Casey cards. I'm just saying, as Sean Casey, there's got to be a card you don't like. As Sean Casey, there's got to be a card that's a cut above. Which represents each category?
My favorite card, start there. My favorite card ever was my 2003 Fleer Ultra. Because it was a card, I was holding my son Andrew, who's now 20. And I believe at the time, it was Family Day 2002 when they took the picture. And it was man, I can't remember the photographer's name, Dan, and I can't remember his last name, but I remember he called me and he was like, hey, I have this great picture of you and your son, Andrew, from Family Day. And Andrew had the eye black on, you know, he was bald, you know.
I've seen this photo.
It's an unbelievable card.
Yeah.
And he's like, would you give approval to us to put it into a card? I'm like, are you kidding me? I'll pay you. You want to make that a baseball card, a real card? I'll pay you.
Wow.
So that's my favorite card. And I remember, too, when I was playing, there was an article in Beckett Baseball, you know, Monthly about that card, about me saying that was my favorite card. And all of a sudden, fans were swarming me with these cards. I'm very grateful for that, too, because I have a ton of that card to this day. My least favorite card was probably the 1998 Donruss, my rookie card. I had just had an orbital fracture. My third day in the big leagues, I got hit in the eye with a baseball.
And they took a photo the next day? Wait.
Well, it wasn't the next day, but I had surgery, and they cut my lip. They cut my gum like this to go up my face, crazy, to fix this double vision I had in the orbital fracture. Like 2 weeks later, they're like, hey, Donruss is here. They want to take a couple photos. And I'm like, I can't even smile. I couldn't even smile at the time. So the picture is like a weird angle. I'm not smiling, and you can see that like there's still damage to the right side of my face. And I'm like, that's not a good look right there. That's not a card you want to be like, hey, that's one of my favorite cards. So that brings back some bad memories for me, that 98 Donruss.
And as you know, you weren't the only big leaguer that was obsessed with collecting. Dmitri Young was on the show not too long ago, and one of my favorite people to talk about baseball cards, all memorabilia. Before we talk about what you've witnessed in Dmitri Young's collection, he has a great impersonation of you that he brought the card in one day. Take a peek at Dmitri Young doing his best Sean Casey. Do any of your teammates text you now going, Dmitri, you're a genius. You're sitting on a gold mine now?
Yeah, one of them's your colleague, Sean Casey. Bro, I can't believe you had that card collection like that. Oh my God, bro.
That's so perfect. Listen, I locker next to Dmitri for like 5 years, so why wouldn't he have, a lockdown of impersonation to me?
Now, his passion for this is bigger than yours.
Oh.
He traveled with his stuff.
Well, it was unbelievable. Listen, first off, Dimitri's one of the biggest wrestling fans, and so am I. He's one of the biggest card collectors, and so am I. So we were like, I was like heaven. We come into the Lens locker, I was like, hey, Dmitri, what are we going to talk about today? Like Macho Man Randy Savage? Who's coming in today with your cards? Is Hank Aaron coming, Clemente? It was the greatest collection I've ever seen. Every day at our lockers, he would get these manila envelopes that would come in, and I'm like, who we got today, bro? And he'd pull them out. I was like, Gem Mint 10 Clemente, Gem Mint 10 Mantle, rookies, all Gem Mint 10s. That's all he collected. Gem Mint 10 rookies. And it was the greatest collection. I think it was the greatest collection of all time. I know he sold it for, I think, a decent amount
A lot of money.
Cash. But it was an investment, like I said, looking back. But to be that little kid that was grinding with his paper route and his cutting grass and all that stuff to get packs of cards, to see Dmitri Young collecting Gem Mint 10s of the greatest players of all time, Willie Mays, Gem Mint 10 rookie, like going all the way back. It was one of the funnest times of my career. Every day was like Christmas, dude. Every day was like Christmas to watch what was coming into Dimitri's locker.
Well, so many guys you played against have great memories of you. And you, because you loved collecting, always took advantage of your spot at first base. And I commend you, my friend, because as someone
you would have done the same thing.
1,000%.
The one person in my life, one of my great friends, that would have done this is you.
No doubt.
There's no doubt.
And it's an honor to be described that way by you.
Yeah.
But I've been in your home. I've seen the stuff you've collected over the years. Describe the memorabilia you have from your playing career.
Well, I tell you what, it's funny collecting it at first. I was such a fan of the game and such a fan of baseball, and still am to this day, that at the beginning, after I came back from that orbital fracture, I really scuffled. I was hitting $170, $180. I'm like, I don't know how long I'm going to be here. And I just had this premonition one day. I go, I'm going to start collecting balls today. So I remember I was like holding on Tony Gwynn. I'm like, hey, any chance you can send a ball over for me? Next series with Braves, Chipper Jones. Hey, you send a ball over to me? Bro, I ended up doing well. I ended up hitting well, that 270. So I was like, I stayed up there. But I thought I was going to be going down. So I was like, I need to get as many balls.
It made you appreciate being in the big leagues.
Oh, you kidding me? Totally. Yeah. I think that injury, sometimes when we have things that don't go exactly how we had planned, those are some of the best things that make you grow. And I think that made me grow as like, hey, man, I really appreciate being here. This injury could have taken it away. So I did collect all these balls. And I tell you what, it made my autograph change. It's crazy. So after the season, I collected.
It made your personal autograph.
It made my autograph change, and this is why.
Okay.
I collected 200 to 250 balls, and I was like a little kid in cancer. I'm 23 years old. Season ends 1998. I roll out all the balls I have, just put them on the floor. I said, unbelievable. Here we go. I start going through the balls. I probably can read 25% of the signatures. I have no idea who these signatures are, and it kind of made me mad because I'm like, dude, I'm a big league ball player. I play against these guys. I don't know 75% of these signatures I can't read, so I changed my signature. It used to be an S-C with a loop over top. I changed it to spell my name, S-E-A-N, and then I got a big C-A-S-E-Y with a loop underneath to make sure that kids could read my autograph, because I was still that 23-year-old kid. I collected 200 balls. I'm like, I don't even know who these guys are.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Wow, Babe Ruth made sure he was very, you could see it. Willie Mays did the same thing.
Those guys, Joe DiMaggio, go back and look at Mickey Mantle, go back and look at the autographs back in the day. I think there was a lot of respect. There was a lot of dignity and write your name on. I'm sorry, dude. Some of these guys' names that are just going like this, like, for all you guys out there that are doing that, clean it up. Seriously, clean it up. All the kids in college that are starting to, when you're going to be big leaguers, start signing your name where people can read them. Like,
I know.
I can't stand that.
Kids today don't use cursive.
It's so
they don't even have it.
It's so tired.
Don't print your name.
Yeah, don't print your name, but let me read it.
Hey, man, we should be on TV sometime.
Yeah.
This is really good.
This is great.
Dude, that was
You're
fun.
the best, bro. You're the best. Thank you. You were perfect to do this.
Thank you. If I may give Sean some unsolicited card advice, he might want to stock up on Bowman. We had Topps brand manager Aaron Abrams come by to give us a little history of the Bowman brand and let us in on why it is so popular with collectors today.
Originally, Bowman was a gum company in Philadelphia. They started kind of making cards, pop culture, the war, mainly in the 40s, and then leading up, they made a few baseball-specific products, but nothing under the Bowman name. Once 1948 hit, they started making specifically baseball cards that they would put in their gum packs. Up until 1955, at which point they sold to Topps, and Topps disbanded the entire brand. Then it was brought back in 1989 by Topps as kind of fulfilling the boom. There was a lot of interest in rookie cards and kind of young prospects, and that's where Bowman came in to really fill that void. I think the most iconic one is the 55. It's that big television set that you could see with some of the most iconic photography of like classics like Pee Wee Reese, you got Jackie Robinson. If you even take it back to the 51, it's the actual rookie card for Mickey Mantle. And then from there, I think people naturally gravitated towards that Griffey as like the main Topps specific or Bowman specific rookie card to get for that year. 92, you got like Chipper Jones and that iconic like jorts look with the very 90s fashion style. And 94, Derek Jeter. Of course, you've got the Pujols and Ichiro Suzuki cards that were their like main rookie cards and attractions. The 2009 Trout is one of the first cards of Trout, of course, before the 2011 updates. The Acuna card is kind of a really iconic card because just how few people had him on their radars and how he's kind of like, that's one of the first cards to go after. Those kind of cards, like even the Mariano Rivera and Manny Ramirez, took on a life of their own. The modern Bowman card has kind of created its own lane for itself as kind of the de facto pre-rookie card, if someone would say, almost on its own, like a rookie card for a professional career. Well, we brought back First Edition. First Edition is kind of the first print run for a Bowman product. Then we have Sapphire Collection, which also got prominence with Topps Chrome. It's taking the Bowman products, the prospects, and then putting them on an exclusive, what we call Sapphire stock, so blue, kind of like a shattered patterned stock chrome look. And because those are such short printed sets, there's a lot of big collector community interest in those. It's really created a niche market for people, whereas Topps Series 1, the flagship, Topps Chrome, everything like that, that's for current players. You know where to get those cards if you want them. If you're really looking to hold on to a guy for 3 or 4 years, get in on the stock at the ground level, that's where Bowman is. It's the ability to tell your friends, like, I bought this guy day one, believing in him, and I've held on to him for the last 5 years, and now it's paying dividends. So I've got this entire collection of 2009 Mike Trouts because I saw his future in 2009, whereas everyone else was sitting on those cards or giving them away for fun. I was there. Those are the kind of stories that Bowman will really provide you.
That's just about it for this episode of MLB's Carded, presented by the eBay Vault. Say hello to the future of collecting. We usually end the show with a pack rip, but this time I have something a little different for you, if you don't mind. Now, while we were in his shop, Sean Casey found a binder of cards from his early collecting days. What was the mayor collecting before he made it to the big leagues? I'm dying to know. I know you are too. Check it out, and I'll see you next time.
Well, this is the binder I had when I was 14 years old. I had all my cards up in the attic, but I did find this binder. So great. I mean, it's so funny playing. I see Ken Griffey Jr. in the front. I collected all of Griff's cards, but then I ended up playing with 6 years with him in Cincinnati. It's just so weird. He was a little, he was a little better than me, so he got to the big leagues a lot quicker. But there was this Fleer, 89 Fleer, but the big card was the 89 Upper Deck. That was the first run of Upper Deck, and that card was just, I haven't even touched it. I like to think it's a Gem Mint 10 because no one's touched it in 30-some years. Wade Boggs. Barry Bonds was, so I was huge in Pittsburgh growing up. Bonds was a rookie in 87, but I went and got this Topps traded signed by him at a little card show. It's kind of cool, you know what I mean? So Will Clark was like my idol, collected all his cards growing up. I just had Eric Davis on my podcast, which was really cool, but to look back and see that I collected Eric Davis, a great picture with him and Bo Jackson and Eric Davis. I believe that's a Fleer Star sticker. Obviously Doc Gooden. If you're collecting at this era and you don't have Doc Gooden, then you weren't really a collector. Tony Gwynn. It's so cool. What's a cool thing for me? It's so funny because I'm just, the little kid in me comes back to remembering these times. But I played against these guys. Like, I was in the batting race with Bonds and batting race with Tony Gwynn and got to know these guys and got to know them as players, and it was in 3 All-Star games, a couple All-Star games with all these guys, and Bo Jackson cards, so cool. Pete Incaviglia, I thought he was going to dominate. He had a couple good years. Wally Joyner was one of my favorites. Will Clark, Wally Joyner, Mattingly, and Mark Grace were my guys. And Wally had his own little set. I thought it was so cool when I got this little set, Wally set. I don't even know who did it. I remember getting that thinking, oh man, I'm set. I remember getting this card in a pack. I think that's an 87 Fleer. I remember getting that in a pack and being like, yes! Wally Joyner rookie. Wally Joyner mini right here. He was just a guy I love. But the Sport Flick cards, remember those when they first came out, the Sport Flick cards? Back when I was growing up, you know, to really, you didn't have the videos and the YouTubes where you can look up a guy's swing right now in slow motion. This is what we did, Sport Flick cards. You know what I mean? Like, and I remember, I was like, oh, it's so cool. You can see Wally Joyner's swing in slow motion. Look how he goes point A to point B. So I used to love that card for that reason. And then Mattingly. I mean, Mattingly was the guy. Talking about his Sport Flick card too. It was so cool to watch his swing. And I just love the guys. Kirby Puckett was another one of my favorites. And then just at the end, what do I have here? Darryl Strawberry at the end, and then that's it. That's just my album here. But I have so many cards, like I said, a lot of the rated rookies in the single sleeves that I have somewhere. I'll have to find those down the road.